My name is Drew Eater. I am the Division Chair for Student Services here at Lyons Township High School. So thank you again for taking the time out this evening to be with us, to hear from Ms. Musser and our senior counselors about what is obviously a very important topic and one that involves some nuance and some detail. And so we want to take the time to make sure that you feel prepared and your family can enter into this feeling like you have a partner in the process. I want to go over just real quickly before I hand it over to Ms. Musser and let her talk about some of the nuts and bolts of the process. I want to just go over something really quickly that I want a message that you hear before you leave tonight. The college admissions process, as you all know, because you've been getting mail now for the past, 3.5 years, from every school across the country, most of which you've probably never heard of, is probably the most media-crazed market over the past 10 to 15 years of anything in the country. The New York Times, Forbes, U.S. News and World Report, it's bonkers, the world of college admissions. And so to preface this, I receive absolutely no royalties from the sales of Frank Bruno's book, and I'm not on his payroll. However, I do love his message of the title of this book, and I want to make sure that as you go forward, the peer pressure that your students will feel, maybe the peer pressure that you are feeling, the pressure that will come in society by reading Facebook and Twitter and all of the articles that will happen, are inevitably going to have an effect, right? And if you as a family can come together and just talk about those things and understand that where you go, where your child will go, is not who they will become, is a really important piece. And I know that's hard to ground yourself with at times, but again, when we think about our philosophy at Lyons Township and how we want to support your students, and the work that Mr. Zeroli, Mrs. Bauer, and Mr. King have put into helping your child develop, this message is really central to not getting caught up in the whirlwind of the craziness that is possible, and many do get caught up in. So with that being said, I do want to hand it over to Mrs. Musser and allow her to get into some of the details. But before I hand over the mic, it is my distinct pleasure to recognize her in what is her 16th year here at Lyons Township High School and her 28th year as a college counselor in the state of Illinois. And Mrs. Musser is going to be retiring at the end of the school year after those wonderful years of service to our community. So if we can just give her a quick round of applause. As a college counselor myself 10 years ago, I called Mrs. Musser to say, hey, do you have that list of schools that have that one program? And she'd inevitably say, no problem, give me 10 minutes and I'll send it to you in an email, and she always did. So this is a wonderful resource for you and your family, and I hope that you continue to use her, and we're lucky to have her here. So Ms. Musser, take away with the details of the evening.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's very flattering. This is my last class. I want to really treat them specially, I hope. I hope I treat every class as special. The job's been very important to me and will continue to be, and I know that I'll leave this in good hands for whoever follows me, and enjoy retirement with my husband and my grandchildren. So anyway, Drew stole my thunder a little bit about not having so much angst. They really have bombarded us with a lot of changes, especially the last couple of years, with changes in our national organization, the way colleges and high schools communicate what they're able to do, and there's been a lot of pressure now to push students to be ready earlier. Some students are, but I think especially in this class where our current seniors have not even been in this building for much time, let alone had much contact personally, it's been quite difficult for them. So we're going to be doing a lot more hand-holding perhaps than we would. Again, thank you for the senior counselors who are here, Mr. King, Ms. Bauer, and Mr. Zeroli. I work with them, with your students, and hopefully we will have a great year together. Oops, starting with turning things on, okay. So one year from now, your students will be enrolling in a 2 or 4 year program, or perhaps taking a gap year or doing something else. Whether or not they will be doing the college process this year, we like them to know what it is. I talked to them all afternoon, as did the senior counselors, and this is the program that they saw. So even if they aren't going to go to college immediately, it's really helpful for them to have this in place, perhaps even get accepted at a college and take a deferment for a semester or year if they feel that they need to do that. So tonight we're just going to talk about what students need to do before they apply, how they can request transcripts, letters of recommendation, send test scores, what to do after they have applied, and what is the timeline for all of this. We already met with your students last Tuesday in this same format. We asked them to review their unofficial transcripts to make sure that there weren't any inaccuracies there before we sent them to the colleges. And we asked them to create a Common App account, not that they have to use a Common Application, but that they have an account ready so that they could sign off on something called a FERPA agreement, which gives us the ability to send their documents for them and their permission as well, because documents do belong to them. We also had asked them to start signing up for college rep visits, which are going to be in person and virtual this year, starting on Monday. So if your students would like to meet with a college rep that is going to be here, they can get a pass from their class and come to the College Center and meet with one personally. Since students haven't been able to get on campuses as they have in the past, that's really a great opportunity that they should take advantage of. If your student is going to make a campus visit, by the way, that's handled through the assistant principal's office, just like any other absence, and all they have to do is bring back proof from the college that they attended. So the college application process itself is in 3 steps, and students always want to jump over that first step. They're ready to request letters of recommendation. They're ready to file the application or get started on a piece of the process without doing the paperwork. And anybody knows that a job well planned is half done. So we encourage them to take the time to get organized, put things together in a way that will make it easier for them in the long haul. First of all, they shouldn't have a list that's too long. They should have finalized their college list with hopefully 3 to 10 schools. It really starts getting unwieldy after 10, especially if they are highly selective schools where you're adding a lot of supplements and essays and additional work to the application. The national average is 4.5. That is also LT's average in terms of how many applications a student processes. Students should have probably or may have 1 REACH school or maybe several REACH schools on their list. So a REACH school is a school where the student does not meet the academic average of the students that were accepted the previous year. They call that the middle 50%. In other words, half of all the students that were admitted the prior year had this GPA range and this test score. So if you do not meet those, then it's out of your reach. For highly selective colleges, those that are below 25% admit rate, and specifically those that are below 10%, and there are quite a few of those these days, even if you have half a dozen schools on that list, they are all REACH schools, even though you may have a very high test score or very high GPA just because of the selectivity. They say no more often than they say yes to applicants. So you want your list to be full of target schools or match schools, ones that match your GPA, ones you're likely to get into, because it is a lot more fun getting a letter or an email that says, welcome, congratulations, we're happy to have you here, than it is to get a thank you, no thank you letter. I also like to see a value school on the list. This is a school that a student would attend because they used to call it a safety school, but also I don't think that gives it enough respect. Often value schools will provide a program or scholarship money or a special opportunity for students that wouldn't be available to them at another place. So it's good to have those on the list. Any school you have on the list should be, first of all, a school you would be happy to attend. Not, oh no, now I have to go here, but actually another school that you would be happy to be at. And that's because students who focus on one school become very disappointed if that school doesn't work out for them. You should know that nationally, 70% of all students do get into their first choice school, so the odds are really pretty good. We always end up with those 20% schools that everybody applies to and are very, very selective. But for the most part, most students are getting into the schools of their choosing. Every school should be a financial fit. I think the biggest heartbreak I have every year is in the spring after students have gotten into wonderful schools and then they've gotten their award letters from the college and they now say, I got into the schools, but I don't have the money to go. And now I'm in a position where I have to borrow $40,000 or $50,000 and I don't know how to do that. That's really not where you want to be. So have those conversations right now about what you can and cannot afford and whether or not you should apply to a school and how much you'd be able to put toward that education, and have those honest conversations now, because trust me, they're a lot more difficult at the end of the year. Every college has a net price calculator on the website. So if you know the GPA and test score, you can estimate what your merit money would be from that particular school. And if you have an EFC, well, this year they're doing away with the EFC, but basically an adjusted gross income that you could put in, they can estimate what your out-of-pocket costs would be, and you could start having a conversation from affordability as well. This is really highlighted in our financial aid program that I posted on the college website. Frank Palmasani has it posted there. It'll run all this month and up to October 6th, when we will have a live Zoom to answer any questions you might have about that. The other part of getting organized, and you would think this would be very simple for kids to figure out, but they very often apply to schools where they have not met the requirements. They tend to think if they've graduated high school that they have all the requirements they need for college. And those requirements will vary by college. Even though many are similar, students need to know if they're going to go to a college that requires 3.5 or 4 years of math at the Algebra 1 and higher level, or whether or not they need 2 years of the same foreign language or 1 year in a fine art. They should know if they're going to the California system, UCLA, UC Berkeley, UCSD, et cetera, that they have a year-long visual and performing arts credit that must be met and must be graded. You can't have it credit, no credit. They also require a higher GPA for out-of-state students. Students interested in the Iowa system uses the Iowa system, Iowa State, University of Iowa, Northern Iowa, uses the Regents Index. So students can actually just go look at their unofficial transcript, put in their grades and courses, their test score if they're going to use it, and if they have 255 points, they're automatically in. 245 for Iowa State and Northern Iowa. So we've given them several tools to help them get organized, and one of them was the college application tracker, which I think I've sent out several times, but that's where they can start putting down what they need for each of these schools. It's already hard enough to sort through a bunch of colleges, let alone the fact that they have different deadlines and different ways to apply. And one of them is called early action or early decision, which basically means you're going to be applying early in the admission cycle. Some of them have moved even as early as September 15th, although it's more common to have a November 1st or November 15th deadline. So it can increase your chances for admission sometimes if it's a priority admission where they're stating that you'll get a priority consideration over someone who applies later. It also can increase your opportunities for scholarships. For instance, Indiana University says if you apply by our early action deadline of November 1st, you'll get full consideration for scholarships. You will get less consideration after that date. You might get a special or popular program that fills up early. This is particularly true of nursing, physical therapy, accounting, and some engineering programs. You might get early registration. However, early is not better if you're not ready. If your GPA isn't where it should be, you may need this extra semester to pull it up, especially after last year where students were trying to make up grades, make up time, and make up better GPAs or test scores. So if you're prepared, as I said, November 1st is a very common deadline. So that gives you, hopefully, a little bit more time not to be hand-wringing over getting applications out too early. There are also different ways to apply, different plans. 3 of them are non-restrictive, and actually those are the most common that our students use, and 2 of them are restrictive. So what are restrictive and non-restrictive plans? The most common is a regular decision plan. This is where a college posts a start date and an end date, and they will review all of those applications received during that time period and then let you know what the results are after they've reviewed all of them. Rolling admissions means they open their application at a certain time and they keep taking applications till they're full. And that might not be all the way until summertime. A lot of them have July rolling, or some have rolling into May or June. So you can apply anytime during that cycle, and they'll review it anytime that you apply and get an answer back to you fairly quickly. The thing you don't know is when are they full. So even though they may be taking applications as late as June and July for some programs, you might find that if they had competitive programs, they might have filled up a little earlier. So if you're applying to a rolling admissions program, still consider applying a little bit earlier in the cycle. Early action is where they post an early action deadline. I just suggested there was one for November 1st. Sometimes they're October 15th. But November 1st and November 15th would be the most common. And that just means I'm going to apply early and you're going to give me a decision early, probably by December or January. So students who know where they'd like to apply and are ready to apply can get the benefit of having it all done and kind of know where they're going by winter break. These are what we call non-binding. There's no commitment to the school. They have until May 1st to let them know they're coming, which gives them lots of opportunities to file a FAFSA form or a CSS profile and find out how much money they will be receiving from the school in the monetary award letter that comes out in the spring. The two restrictive plans are called early decision and restrictive early action. So early decision is a program where you sign a contract with the school. The student signs it, the parent signs it, the counselor signs it, and sends it to the college. And it basically states, if you accept me, I will come. And I will also be required to withdraw all my applications at that point and attend the school. So there are a number of schools, so why would someone use something like that? There are a number of schools that actually take a very large portion of the freshman class early decision. They want to lock those students in. They want to know that they have those seats full. They know that there's a commitment on the part of the student, and they're done, and the student is done. They accept the financial aid package that the school offers them. Why would anybody do that? Often the school will also have a higher acceptance rate. So if you're looking at Northwestern, for instance, they took half of the class early decision. Average admit rate was about 30%. The average admit rate for their regular decision pool was 11. That's a big difference. However, that's a big commitment, and you shouldn't go ED just because you think you're going to increase your chances of getting in. It should be a school that you love, that you want to attend. You're only allowed to apply to one school early decision. It's kind of like a marriage. You don't kind of hunt around for somebody that you think you're going to marry. You say, I'm in love with that person, and that's the only one I want, and I'm committed to them from the front end, and nothing else matters, okay? So think of it that way. Restrictive early action is used by schools like Stanford and Yale and Notre Dame. That just means if you apply to us early, we are not going to permit you to apply early decisions somewhere else. You can't be in love with someone else while you're applying to us, is what they're saying. So they restrict where you can apply, and it's generally to another another private school or under an early action program. So the ED is the only one that's a binding contract. So if you are considering using an ED program, consider it very carefully, whether or not the financial consequences would be of importance to you, and proceed that way. If not, go with one of the other plans. Not every application is a long, drawn-out process. If you looked at the Common App, it's pretty long. It's the longest one there is. They call it the Common App, but there's only really one portion of it that's common. The rest of it can be very uncommon. And so I would also, if an application is offered as both an institutional application, in other words, coming from the college or on the Common App, I would look at those two applications and say, which one's going to take me less time? Which one's going to be more beneficial? Which one's going to be quicker? Maybe uses fewer parts. So if you're looking at a Northern Illinois app, for instance, if you have a 2.75 GPA and have taken the coursework that they suggest, they are test-free. That means they do not even look at a test score, even if you send it, and you're automatically admitted. A lot of our state schools are exactly the same way, Eastern and Western and Southern, and they're very simple applications. If you know your name, your address, your birth date, what you're going to study, your schedule for the year, you have the application fee or the fee waiver, you're in. It is very nice if you have one of those schools on your list to get those one and done. You will know in a couple of weeks whether or not you're admitted, and you can at least say, well, I know we can go here, and then work on the more difficult applications that require longer essays or personal statements. The reason I say I like to see students do that is I've seen them have more success. If they have a long essay to write, they tend to put it off, put it off, put it off, and now all of a sudden they're not applying even to a third of the schools that they said they were going to. So if you have one of these easy ones, do it. Or Iowa, as I said, the Regents Index, go ahead and use their application. Find out ahead of time if you have the 255 points, then you are guaranteed your admission and you can get in. Also, a lot of these don't even require a transcript. They'll use a self-reported academic record, which is basically you're telling them what your grades and your coursework were, and then they will configure the GPA on their own. Okay, some other ones, though, are basic applications like that, and they might have an additional piece, a personal statement, or if you're just at the borderline of meeting admission requirements, you may have the option to use a personal statement. That's when you would write a short essay of why you think you could succeed there, what you're going to bring to the campus, or why you're a good fit there. I suggest you do not send things they do not want. U of I says we don't want a letter of recommendation, don't send them. We won't read them. They want to base their decisions on other things unless there's a special circumstance. So don't send them things thinking that it will increase your ability to get in. And of course, your application is complete when the college has received all of the materials. So I mentioned two types of applications. One is where the student fills out an application that goes directly to the college, their college's own application. And I would include the coalition application in there as well. Even though it's a specific type, we treat it as though it is a college's own application because our documents go directly to that particular college. If the student uses a common application, the common application is used by over 900 member schools. The student fills out a basic portion of the common application and often a personal statement of 650 words that goes to every single college that is on the list. So some students like it because they say, once I've got this basic application done, I check off the list, I want this school, this school, this school, and I'm done. The problem is the common application, as I mentioned earlier, is not all that common. In other words, one school may want an additional essay. One may have some additional writing supplements. One might have not use the personal statement at all. They all require a school form that your counselor will fill out if you're using the common application. So when you use the common app, we are sending things to Common App. We are sending your transcripts there, your letters of recommendation there. Your counselor automatically sends a school report there. So there's an extra step. If you're applying to a school's own institution, they also may require some extra documents, a personal statement or a counselor or teacher recommendation, but those are going directly to the school. We will emphasize this over and over with your students and with you as you're helping your students. They must know how they're going to apply before they request any documents. So for instance, if they tell me they're going to apply via the common application, I'm sending my documents to the common application. They sit there in a queue until the student's application arrives. At the time that it arrives, The college is notified that there's an application there, and they download the entire queue with all of the documents that are with it. If the student decides later on, after telling me to send the documents there, that, oh, you know, this application, their own application is a lot shorter, I think I'll use that. Their application went to the college, and everything else went to Common App. And there's no way that the school knows that an application isn't coming soon, because they're not even notified until that application's there. So the student's application is one place and their documents are somewhere else, and the school will keep telling them they're missing documents and they're really sitting at Common App. So it's important that we know how and when they will be sending those items, which is why I send you this little tracker, so that students can write down the colleges that they're applying to. And there's a place at the top for them to put their Common App username and password so they don't forget it. Because they'll often come into the office and say, I don't remember what my Common App password is. Do you know what it is? No. Any more than anybody knows anybody else's passwords. So we need to make sure that they know the username and password, or the email address and password. I think most students use their LT email address because it's an email that they check more often, and it doesn't get cluttered with all of their personal email. So you'd write the college name down, and you would look up what that particular college wants. Do they need an essay? Do they need a teacher rec? Do they need a counselor rec? And they've got it all on one sheet of paper before they begin to request items. So next we come to sending the pieces. So what does the student do and what do we do? So the student tells us what they need based on their organizational chart. They complete the application. If it needs an essay, they do that. If there are supplemental essays, they complete those. Same with resumes and portfolios. Those are usually for theater students or music students. Some colleges will give you an interview. A few will require one. Test scores must be ordered from SAT, or which is the College Board, or ACT if the student took an ACT. And then letters of recommendation must be made in Naviance. So after your student tells us in Naviance what they need, we send the transcript, the counselor letter of rec, the school report form that goes with a Common App, or with a secondary school report that goes with some non-Common Apps, teacher letter recommendations. Every teacher letter of recommendation for a Common App also has a teacher evaluation form. As a matter of fact, Common App calls it the teacher evaluation form, not recommendation letter. And it is a form that rates that student compared to other students in the class on items like intellectual curiosity, leadership, creativity, how well he works with others in the classroom, and also how he compares to other students that she or he has taught over the years. And that's done automatically with every letter. And then also we will file the fee waiver on the student's behalf if they check that they needed a fee waiver and are actually eligible for a fee waiver. So the student has a lot of responsibility in knowing when and how they're going to apply. They have to know what's required. They have to request each piece. And then they need to keep checking the status. And a lot of them fall down here. Once they're accepted at a school, they're given an account. They need to know if they're now in Michigan State, they get a Sparty account or something that they have to go in. That's another username. That's another password. And they have to start tracking all that information. So again, don't have too many colleges. It can get kind of complicated. If they're on the Common App, there'll be little check boxes when things have been received, so students should check that before things are due to make sure there aren't any missing materials. However, they should also be mindful that even though they push the button, things don't happen automatically. They want them to, but they need to know that the school has to download the application. Then they have to get one of their students probably to put it in the individual student's files. Student workers often do that job. So they must be patient. Sometimes that can take a few weeks. So we'll start getting calls saying, oh, they said they need my transcript when the transcript's already been sent. So today we showed them how to add applications and request transcripts into Naviance, and I'll show you at the end of this how that works. They just go into Naviance under colleges I'm applying to, they click a little plus sign, and they follow the instructions to add an application. Those instructions are on the College Center website under application resources. So you can look at I've got step-by-step paper instructions as well as a video you can watch. The same is true for asking for letters of recommendation. I also have this entire presentation broken down into 3 different parts for those of you that know someone that couldn't come or want to come back and review something that I might have said. Those are posted online as well. So anyway, the student will request a transcript for every application. Some will automatically say it's been submitted because they're self-reported academic record. But if your student already applied somewhere, for instance, Auburn is a popular school, they take things quite early. This year they even offered a September 15th early action deadline. All the student needed to do was complete the application, self-report their own grades, and they didn't need anything official from us. So we don't know that they even applied to Auburn. So if Auburn wants something from us later, that's not helpful that we don't know that. So we ask the student to add that application anyway. They won't have to add a transcript at this time because an official one won't be required until later if the student enrolls. The student will then select the application type and the deadline. So the application type is an early action or early decision. And then when they come to the pull-down menu, it will match several different dates. So an early action date might be November 1st. Those 2 should match, and it tells us when you need those materials sent. Same is true for the letter of recommendation. It tells the teacher when that recommendation letter needs to be there. And then, of course, again, we need to know, was it a common application or did it go directly to the institution? And we'd like them to add and request any document at least 3 weeks ahead of the deadline. That doesn't mean they have to have their application ready, by the way. They can continue to work on essays, they can continue to work on the application, but now they've requested the pieces so that they're sent. And it's kind of off the student's plate, and it also keeps them from requesting those things 2 days before they're due, and we have 1,000 students that made that request. So we like them to request their things early, especially recommendation letters. Again, those instructions are on the LT website and on the Canvas pages that the counselors have. You can track the progress because once you've added those schools in Naviance, you can see that we have a column here. It's actually not transcripts, it's official materials. If it says pending, that means that we have the request and it's pending a response. Once we send it, it says initial materials submitted, and then you know what you requested has already gone. Counselor recommendations. Please make sure you need one first. Lots of schools don't want teacher or counselor recommendations. It always surprises students and parents, I think. So make sure you need that first. The easiest way to do that is if you're on the Common Application, you can go to the dashboard, and the dashboard is where all of the students' colleges are listed that the student's thinking about applying to. And you can click on Application Requirements, and it will give you a big spreadsheet of everything that's required. If I have enough time at the end, I'll show you. And you can just click on all colleges. You can see what every college requires, or just my colleges. And everything in your list will tell you every due date that they offer, whether or not they need a teacher evaluation, a counselor recommendation, what the fees are, all those things right there in a spreadsheet. So make sure you need that counselor recommendation first. We've been telling students since last spring that in order for your counselor to write a good letter for you, he's got to know about you. Even though you develop a relationship, there are specific things that he or she is just not going to remember or perhaps doesn't even know. So they have an opportunity to tell the counselor things about themselves. And so they should do that in the student self-reflection survey. So they just go into Naviance in their About Me section. There's a little thing called surveys. It says self-reflection. I think it's only a half a dozen questions that the counselor can then take that information and write a letter for the student. The counselors will not write the letter without that being done first. So students don't have to rush to request the letter, but if they know they're going to need one, they should do the student survey first. Then the counselor can refer to that. Unfortunately, Naviance doesn't have a way for students to request a letter from a counselor. I don't know why, but they don't. So we ask them to go on the Canvas page. We have a Google sheet. They just pick their counselor's name and they say, I'm requesting a letter of recommendation. They need to know the application type because the counselor needs to know, again, is this going to the Common App? If it does, I need a Common App school report that will accompany it, and I send it to Common App. Or is it going directly to the school? Then I will use a different kind of form and send the transcript and the letter to the school. Whether it's a counselor or a teacher, they need time to write a good letter. So give them sufficient time and information and all the time that they need to write it. You don't have to rush. They know what the time frame is, but you don't want to wait till the last 2 weeks either. Teacher recommendations, minimum 3 weeks before the deadline. We have a lot of teachers that are asked over and over. And I will say we usually suggest that you go to a junior teacher because they had you in the class recently. Your senior teachers are just getting to know you. Last year with COVID, I think a lot of colleges are saying we'll take a sophomore year teacher just because of this kind of odd relationship. And a lot of classes were Zoom classes, or some students perhaps weren't even in the classroom, they were at home. So it would be better if they asked a teacher who might have had freshman or sophomore year. When asked which teacher they should ask, sometimes the school will tell you to use a core course teacher, such as an English or a math or science teacher. Others leave it up to you. I always say, find someone who likes you and will write enthusiastically about you. It doesn't have to be your highest level class. It doesn't have to be an AP class, but it has to be somebody who can really talk passionately about you and kind of sell the school on what you did in the classroom. As I said, every application does not need a teacher recommendation, but if you see on the Common App it needs a teacher evaluation, or you're on the website of the college and you see it does need one, you're going to do the same thing for the teacher that you did for the counselor, and that's provide information for them to write a good letter for you. So especially over Zoom, it was hard to get to know people, but the student can tell them what their experience was in the classroom, perhaps a project they did, an essay they wrote, what they loved about the class, why they enjoyed that particular subject, and then they post that in Naviance. It actually lives there. We used to actually have them hand a sheet to the teacher. We had to change that process because students weren't here last year and some teachers weren't here last year. So we now have them just put it in Naviance and the teacher can see it anytime. So the student will go into Naviance and fill out that form and leave it there, and then they'll add a request to the teacher through Naviance saying, please send this letter of recommendation to the following schools, and they'll click off which schools they would like them sent to, and they'll hopefully say thank you for writing my letter. Our teachers are wonderful. They do write an awful lot of letters. And also they'll tell them, you're teacher number 1, teacher number 2, or teacher number 3. Most schools, if they do ask for a letter, may want 0 or 1. Some will take 2. Very few take 3. Usually that third one is something like a music teacher, a theater teacher, another teacher that's not a core subject, but for instance, the Jacobs School of Music requires 3 letters, but that's unusual. Students are going to ask for specific schools, not just to write for all of my schools. They're going to ask a specific teacher to write for a specific school, and they will be tracking that in Naviance. If a student asks a teacher or adds a school later on, then he has to notify the teacher again to please send a letter to that school as well. They don't fill out a form again. The teacher just goes back and sends the same letter. Counselors and teachers will be sending the same letter to all of your colleges and scholarship places. This is kind of what it would look like on Naviance in tracking it, and I'll show you a video actually how to get those in there. Test scores. I'm going to repeat this a few times because it never seems to get through, but LT does not send your test scores. You own your test scores. We stopped sending them years ago. because students take and retake scores, and there's just too much of a chance we're going to send the wrong score, the wrong date. Some students take tests 4 or 5 times. They take SATs, ACTs, APs. So at the time the student registered for a test, they had the opportunity to select 4 schools that would receive that score for free. If they didn't, they now have to pay to send a score. So that means if it was the SAT that they took, they have to go to College Board. You're going to need to know your ID number for that account, and you're going to have to request a score report to be sent to each of the schools to which you're applying. So that's going to cost you about $13 per score per school. Another reason not to have 15 schools in your list. Some schools will superscore. That means on the ACT, they'll take your highest reading, English, math, and science, add them together, and divide by 4. So if you took 2 sittings of the ACT, they'll take the highest of the reading, highest of the math, etc., to come out with a higher composite score. If it's an SAT, those are added together. They'll take your highest math and verbal and add those together. Not all schools do that, but a good number of them do. So that means if you're going to take advantage of superscoring, you now get to pay for 2 scores or 3 scores to be sent to each of those schools. As I said, no need to request those scores if you already sent them. And right now, students, the last year and this year, we went from about 200 schools that offered test optional to over 2,000 schools that now offer test optional. So you may or may not have to send that score, but if you sent the score already to a school and now you want to go test optional, they will not look at that score. You'll mark that on the application. It will not be reviewed in the process. So for those of you that already sent it, don't worry about that. If you want the complete list of schools that are test optional or test free or test blind, that means they don't even look at them, you can go to www.fairtest.org, fairtest.org. I gave you a copy of this little spreadsheet. I actually have it live on the website. And this is just kind of a simple way for a student to kind of figure out where should we go. So first of all, you add an application, you add the college in Naviance under colleges I'm applying to. And then you ask yourself, does it need a transcript? If it's self-reported academic record, it doesn't need one. So then no action is needed. If it says it needs an official transcript, if you click on that request in Naviance, it takes you right to the request, and you can add the request right there. Next step is, does it need a teacher recommendation? If you look on Common App under the application requirements, or the individual school on Common App tells you what recommendations are required. If it says teacher evaluation, then you would fill out that form to tell the teacher information about yourself, add that request in Naviance, and that would go to the teacher. If it doesn't, then you don't do anything. Next step, does it need a counselor recommendation? If so, then you would make sure you did that student self-evaluation survey, follow up with the request on the Canvas page. If it doesn't, no action is needed. And finally, if it needs a test score, you either sent it already or you need to contact SAT or ACT. So that's kind of everything in a nutshell. I think a flowchart sometimes helps students just kind of see where the process is going and what questions you should be asking. So again, it's getting organized, sending the pieces, and filing the application. You notice filing the application is last because we want you to take your time and send it correctly. You'd be surprised how many students don't put their proper name on an application. We get Jack when his name on his transcript is John. There is a place to put a nickname on a Common App, but they don't want the nickname as part of the personal data on the demographic information. A lot of students change their names. So if the name on the transcript doesn't match the name that you have on your SAT and your application, you're going to need to contact them and make those changes. I actually had a student one year whose test score was not accepted because she had Maggie on there instead of Margaret, and they couldn't match it. So Remember that it's technology, not people, that are often looking at these, and they're scanning for names and numbers and dates. So you must have your personal data correct. So don't be in a hurry on the application. Make sure that application matches what our official transcript says. When listing activities and honors on an application, you should use the one that you're most involved in first and show the most leadership first. And then they go in descending order. The Common App only allows 10 activities because they feel that after 10 you couldn't be that involved. They're just a laundry list, and that's not what they're really looking for. They're looking for increased participation, increased engagement, and increased leadership within an organization. In the essays, we certainly want to hear a student's voice, not a parent's voice. Be genuine, be reflective, think about where you've come from, what you enjoyed, what you've enjoyed in your high school years, whether it's courses or people or passions. You're not writing to impress the admissions people, you're writing to tell them who you are so that they get a good idea of why you'd be a good fit for that school and what you will bring to that campus as well as receive from them. Interviews, they're generally optional. If you get an opportunity, it might be valuable for you. If you don't lift your head and speak to anybody, that might be something you skip because that's not your strong suit, okay? Fee waiver, we have forms in the College Center. If you're eligible for a fee waiver, we'll have you fill out a form, and then anytime you have your applications on Common App or otherwise, they would be waived. This is my favorite. Due dates are not the day you do it. They are the last minute you can do it. So I like to make sure that they understand the difference between those two. So transcript requests certainly are due a minimum of 2 weeks before a deadline. Students think we still work here over winter break. There's no one here processing those applications. So if something's due around the beginning of January, and many regular decision applications are, please get those to us in December so that we can get those processed for you. I can't tell you how many emails I get over Christmas break when I'm in Florida or something, saying, oh, I added this school, and can you send this right away? So know that processing does not take place when we're not here. So it's, if you leave yourself sufficient time, so for instance, the November 1 deadline is a good idea to get it to us by October 18th, obviously November 1st for a November 15th deadline. What do I do after we've sent it all out? Well, you're going to start receiving admissions decisions for early action. Of course, if you have applied early decision, you must withdraw your other applications. Some of the selective schools will be asking for a mid-year report in January. That means they want to see those 7th semester grades before you move on. And we'll be meeting with students the first week in December to talk to them about scholarships and also mid-year reports or 7th semester transcripts. But some of those schools then will not make a decision until April. It's very common, especially for the Ivies and Ivy Likes, to offer their decisions the first week of April, by the first week of April. However, May 1st is National Notification Day. You have plenty of time to look over the offers of admission, the financial aid packages that have been offered, and then commit to a school by May 1st. After May 1st, they are no longer required to hold that slot open for you. We would like you to turn in a copy of all your acceptances and your scholarship offers to the College Center. At the end of the year, we not only have a senior honors program, we have the graduation program, and if you are attending a college in which you have received, from which you've received a scholarship, we'll post your name as a scholarship recipient for that particular college. Paying for college. First of all, every single senior is required to complete a FAFSA form. That's the free application for federal student aid, or sign a waiver saying that you do not wish to do so. The waiver is on the College Center website again under the financial aid, so you must do one of those two things, file a FAFSA or file a waiver saying you're not filing a FAFSA. Who doesn't file a FAFSA? Someone who does not have financial need or is not going to receive a student loan from the federal government or the state, or a parent loan. Some schools will be requiring a CSS profile. That's through the College Board. and it is required by some colleges for financial aid. It asks more questions than the FAFSA does. I would really suggest, of all years, that this be the year that you watch the financial aid program. We've had it for many years, but FAFSA has made a lot of changes this year in terms of who does the student live with, who should report their income. It used to be if you lived with a parent 51% of the time and they were divorced or separated, they only counted one parent's income. They are changing those, and they're changing a lot of other things on the FAFSA as well. So this is a year you definitely want to watch the financial aid program at your convenience online, and then join Frank Palmasani and myself for the Zoom meeting. The Zoom link is already on the website. Use the packet. If you haven't been on the College Center webpage, we've got tons of stuff there. Tutorials on the Common App, all kinds of instructions on how to use Naviance, instructions on how to file these applications, but also we have something called the packet. We started calling it that because every kid would come in and say, there's some sort of scholarship packet my mom told me to pick up. So we just started calling it the packet. But it's basically all the news, college events that are happening on campuses, open houses that your students can take advantage of, virtual fairs that are happening, virtual visits and information about visits that may be here. And so it's a good idea. It is no longer printed. We used to print it. Now it's only online. Everybody wants us to save paper. And plus, we can update it constantly so it's not out of date. Something comes in today, it can be there. We also have a job board on our website, which is really helpful. I think we have 30 jobs posted. It's amazing. Every day I get a call from someone else who has a job. We just can't find people who are taking the jobs. After you file the FAFSA, you'll get an award letter from the school, because when you file a FAFSA, it goes to the Department of Education, not the Internal Revenue Service, but the Department of Education, even though you've given them your tax information. And they're going to determine how much your family is able to pay or contribute toward the education. And so they'll come up with a number. You will list all the schools that you're applying to, and those schools will get that number, and each one will give you a different package depending on how much of that federal, state, or personal money that they would like to award you. We have a few scholarships that are running right now. You can look in the packet and find them. Most of them are related to colleges. For instance, if you're applying to Indiana, you can apply for the Indiana Wells. If you're applying to a particular college, they may offer a scholarship. Right now, we're adding a few more other national scholarships. Most of the scholarships will be between November and March, and including our LT scholarship, which is where you find our booster club scholarships, et cetera. And as I said, we're going to be meeting with the students on how to apply for those. But in the meantime, if there are any scholarships that need an official transcript, you can fill out this document. The students can fill in this document, turn it into the College Center, and we will actually give them either send it electronically if they give us an email address, or if they need a physical copy of the transcript, we will tell them when they can pick that up. Okay, I am going to switch right now and just kind of show you the videos that show the students how to add that to a college to that list.
Deciding where you want to apply to college is a big decision. After researching a lot of different colleges and universities, visiting college campuses, and talking to your counselor, parents, or guardians, you've hopefully narrowed down your list to a few safety schools, matches, and reach schools. Using Navient Student, you can share your list of colleges that you've decided to apply to with your counselor. To start building a list of colleges you're applying to in Navient Student, go to the My Favorites card on the Navient Student homepage and select colleges I'm applying to. You may see a banner telling you to match your Common App account. If you do, and you're applying to any schools that are a member of the Common App, you should complete Common App account matching before adding any colleges to your list. To learn more about matching your Common App account to Navient's and adding Common App colleges to your list, click the link on the screen to watch the video. If you don't see this banner, or if you're not applying to any Common App schools, locate and select the plus sign on the right side of the screen to manually add colleges to your list. In step 1, Add Application, start typing the name of the college that you want to add to your list. Keep typing until the school name displays, then select it from the list. Next, select the app type by clicking the arrow and choosing an option from the list. The list will only populate with the application types that are currently available at the school. For I'll submit my application, you'll select the arrow and choose from the options that display to indicate how you're applying. While some colleges have only one way to apply, other colleges may have several ways that you can apply, so always make sure that you've reviewed all of the choices listed here. If you see the option to let your counselor know you've submitted your application to this college, and you've already done so, just click the box and a check mark will display. To save this college to your list, select Add Application. But if the option to add and request transcript is available, and you need to have transcripts sent to this school, you should select that option instead. In step 2, select the transcripts that you'll need to have sent to this school. The options that you see here may be different than the options that you see in your Navient student account. Confirm the college name where you want to have the transcript sent, and select Request and Finish to complete the transcript request. The college that you just added will be in your list and visible to your counselors.
Okay, as soon as the student adds all of that, the counselor looks at it and can see application to Auburn. That's going to be an early action application. That's the type. The early action deadline that matches early action is November 1st. And then over here, the office materials are pending because we haven't said anything. There'll be a little monitor that appears. This says that this school takes applications directly to the institution. It's not a Common App. If there was a CA inside of this, it would be a Common App. And if it's a CA inside of it with a line through it, it means they offered both and the student chose not to go Common App. So that's why it's really important for us to have all of that information correct. So if a student isn't sure how he's going to apply yet, hold off and wait until they know whether or not they're going to apply via Common App or directly to the school.
From the list, you can see the deadline type and date, if you requested a transcript, the office material status, submission type, and more. To add more colleges, just click the plus sign and repeat this process.
Okay, so after the student has added a college, if that college requires a letter of recommendation from a teacher, this is how the student makes that request.
Select an option to continue.
Our students will only request a letter of recommendation for a specific college.
To request a letter of recommendation for a specific college and Navient student, go to the Colleges menu and select Letters of Recommendation. The Letter of Recommendations requests display. From here, you can see the status of any request that you've already made. Click the information icon to learn more about the status types. To request a letter of recommendation, click Add Request. If you don't have colleges in your list, you cannot make a request for a specific college. Requesting a letter of recommendation is a 3-step process. First, you'll select the teacher you want to write the recommendation. Click the drop-down arrow and choose the teacher's name from the list. If you've already asked that teacher to write a recommendation, a notification will display. Next, make sure that specific request is selected. The list of colleges in your application list will display, along with the number of letters required, allowed, and requested, and the recommendation due date. Click in the empty box to the left of Select All if you want the teacher to write a letter for all colleges that are listed. Or click the box to the left of a specific college name to choose only that college. If a college doesn't require a recommendation, a notification will display under the college's name, and if you've already requested the maximum number of letters allowed, you'll be blocked from making additional requests for that school. In the last step, you can add a personal note to remind the recommender about your personal qualities or specifics about your request. Then choose Submit Request. A success notification will display, and you'll be able to see a list of your recommendations. To cancel a request, Navient student, go to Colleges and select Letters of Recommendation. The Letter of Recommendations requests display. From here, you can see the status of any request that you've already made. To cancel a request, click Cancel Request, and then confirm Cancel Request. A success notification will appear. A general recommendation request can be made if you don't have any colleges in your application list yet, or if you want to make a request for all current and future colleges in your application list. To make a general request in Navient Student, go to Colleges and select Letters of Recommendation. To request a letter of recommendation, click Add Request. Requesting a letter of recommendation is a three-step process. First, you'll select the teacher you want to write the recommendation. Click the drop-down arrow and choose the teacher's name from the list. Next, choose General Request. In the last step, you can add a personal note to remind the recommender about your personal qualities or specifics about your request. Then choose Submit Request. A success notification will display, and you'll be able to see a list of your recommendations.
So almost everything is stored in Naviance for the students so that over the 4 years they have one common place to have all of their personality inventories, etc. Okay, I'll show you what the student sees on their page. So this is a student main page. In this case, it's mine. It's a demo page. And so all the student would do is go to the About Me section, Surveys from Your School, and this one, Student Self-Reflection, is for the counselor, and here's the teacher number 1, number 2, and number 3 info sheets. So the student self-reflection asks questions. Is there a specific career path you're pursuing? List a few adjectives you think best describe you. Do you have academic accomplishments you're particularly proud of, etc. The teacher number 1, put the name of the teacher, the name of the class or activity, the year that you took the class, the grades you earned, what were your outstanding activities. In my opinion, my best achievement was a challenge I overcame, what I feel I gained most from your class, and I'd appreciate if you'd mention the following. And then it tells them whether or not the letter is required or optional for the school and the name of the school. So that's where they would put those. And then I'm just going to show you so this is what a Common App dashboard looks like. Remember I told you that once your students start adding schools to the My Colleges list, they appear in a dashboard, and you can click on Application Requirements. And I've got My Colleges Only checked, so only the colleges in my list are on here. And this is kind of a wide spreadsheet, but you can take the first one. So this one's Bradley University. They don't have ED, they don't have ED2, they don't have EA. They have rolling admissions. So that tells me when that's due. You can see it's not due until July 27th. I wouldn't wait that long. When you want to scroll all the way, it tells you whether or not they use the personal essay under the Common App, and then which tests they would take. Then over here, this TE right here, so you can see that. TE is teacher evaluation. This one requires none. DePaul requires none. Indiana, none. Marquette, none. Northwestern, 1. So where students tend to think that we need lots of teacher recommendations, you can see just from these schools, not everyone does. CR is a counselor recommendation. Again, Northwestern's the only one that requires it. This is an other recommender. You don't have to worry about that unless you have a coach or someone that is going to, that's outside of LT. So students who are applying on the Common App keep a list of schools they're applying to in Common App, and it will match the list of Common App schools that they have in Naviance. So I happen to be on the dashboard, but also My Colleges has that list. And anytime you click on a particular college, so I showed you that big sheet. Let's say I was looking at University of Chicago individually. Right down the middle, it gives you the deadline information, the application fees, and right here tells you all of the recommendations that are required for that school. So they all need a school report, which your counselor will do automatically. This one needs a mid-year report. That's a 7th semester transcript that their student will request. A final report is just one we send at the end of the year. Once you're admitted, at the end of the school year, we send a final transcript to the one school you will attend, showing that you graduated and you met requirements and that your grades were maintained. Because you're really not officially registered until they get that final transcript and make sure that your grades did not slide. They can rescind an offer of admission if they see a significant change in your grades. And then there's additional information. And then as you scroll down, they'll tell you whether or not what their testing policy is, whether they use the personal application, that 650-word essay, additional questions, and if there's a writing supplement. So that's all right there for every school. Students have waived their rights to view a letter of recommendation. We had them do that as a FERPA agreement. Now, they don't have to waive their rights, but it's not likely someone will write a letter if you haven't waived your rights. You should trust the teacher or the counselor to write your letter and to write a favorable letter or a truthful letter. So the colleges also like to see that a student has waived those rights because they want to feel that they're getting an honest letter from the counselor and or teacher. I often get asked, when should a student apply test optional? And obviously, it's a case-by-case basis, but in general, I would say if your academic work far exceeds your test score, you probably wouldn't want to send your test score. If it supports your test score, you can go ahead and send it, especially if any scholarships might be tied to that score.
If the college will take a Common App or a specific college, is there a recommendation for which one you should do?
They cannot prefer one over the other. That's why I say if there's an easier one, do the easier one. It's the same to them. Actually, I would think a lot of schools have preferred their own application. U of I, by the way, went on the Common Application this year in a really strange way. So it's a longer application. So they only allowed them to to offer regular decision, not early action. However, it says in print underneath it, if you want to be considered for early action, then send it in by the early action date and we'll consider it for early action, even though it says regular decision, which is very confusing. Also, if your students are applying to U of I, they offer you 2 options for a major. If you write a short essay about why you want to major in the first major, it goes to that particular college. They admit by college. So if you wanted to be a business major, it goes to the College of Business. If the College of Business does not admit you and you have not gotten a second choice, either a second major or the Division of General Studies as a second choice, you're one and done. You're not admitted at all. If you put a second choice, they'll send it to that college to see if you're admissible for the second choice. And then if you're not admissible for the second choice, it may offer you Division of General Studies. So you have make sure you don't just do one. You can do one and then Divisional General Studies, meaning I still want to come even if I don't get in directly to engineering or business or whatever I asked for first. Or if you don't want to, some students don't. They say, if I'm not getting in their engineering program, I'm not going. Then if you don't get in engineering, then they will deny you. Yes?
For the transcripts, do you guys automatically send the transcripts, or do we have to notify you to send the
The
transcripts?
student makes the request in Naviance, because we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know when you need a transcript or where you need to send it or how you're sending it. So you're telling us by putting it in Naviance, I'm applying to this school by this date with this kind of application, and this is what I need.
And then there's nothing, I'm sorry, and then there's nothing else to do once we do the request in Naviance?
Correct. You'll
Okay.
see the request, and if it says initial materials submitted, we sent it.
If you have a student that applies early action and they're put on a wait list, how does that affect the rest of the applications or how the student would find out when they are accepted, if they are?
Okay, generally you don't jump from early action to the wait list. Usually you get early action and then you're deferred. It's the worst limbo ever. You're deferred until the regular admission pool, and then you could still get put on a wait list, right? So wait list means we thought you were really admissible, but we had a whole bunch of other people that we're admitting first. And if they accept our offer, then we aren't going to have room for you. But if they don't, we may offer you a spot off the wait list. In the meantime, however, if it goes past May 1st, you have to commit to another school and hope you get off the wait list. Sometimes you don't get off the wait list till June, July, or even August. So you have to commit to another school, enroll in another school, pay that enrollment deposit. If they offer you a spot on the wait list after that, you'd have to notify the other school that you're no longer going. You've been offered a spot on a wait list. You will lose all those deposits. Generally, you can get deposits back for either housing or enrollment before May 1st if you request them. Yes.
Is there a parent login for Naviance, or are you accessing it through your
No, you
child's
just,
account?
the student's name. We really want the student to do the work. And we have found that a lot of parents want to do it for them. And this happens every year. I'll call Johnny down and say, I have a problem with this request. It says you're saying you're going early decision, but I don't see an early decision agreement. And they'll say, I don't know, my mom did that. So it's really a problem if mom created a Common App essay and then the student created one and we matched the student and then they go back to using the prior one. It's really a problem if they have two accounts. So look over their stuff. Don't do it. Also, this is a stressful time for everybody. Don't ruin your relationship with your kids over applications, you know. Check in with them, support them. Try not to nag them. They'll just go in the room and ignore you anyway, probably. And it's not worth it. Things turn out okay. I see students change their minds all the time about where they're going and what happens and what they're happy with.
I have a question about the transcripts again. On the dashboard of the Common App, is that where it will say transcript needed?
No, the dashboard really just keeps track of all the applications you're thinking about applying to. Once you put them in My College List, and that's on Common App. That's kind of you're looking through the different colleges that you're going to apply to and seeing what the requirements are. When you move that list to Naviance, you're asking for a transcript and you're saying, this is where I'm applying. Because we don't apply through Common App. Some schools do, but then we'd have to be charging you for transcripts and you'd be taking care of the whole process yourself. So we send things through Naviance.